So Stoops has finally hit level 100 in Diablo 4, and he is going to give us his final honest review of the game. And this is going to be interesting because keep in mind, he is a hardcore top tier Lost Ark player. So this is going to be something different.
This video is sponsored by GameStop for their brand new Diablo 4 Xbox
Of course
Series
it
X
is.
bundle. With the release of Diablo 4, this exclusive bundle includes an Xbox Series X console, a wireless
Wow.
controller, an ultra-high-speed HDMI cable, as well as a full copy of Diablo 4.
You even get a high-speed HDMI cable. Wow, sign me up.
The bundle also features a variety of cosmetics across various Diablo titles as well as World of Warcraft. Enjoy hundreds of titles available through the Xbox Game Pass membership, all of which can be enjoyed on a custom 1TB SSD. The bundle also features my cat Earl. I'm just kidding, it doesn't include that. But if you are interested in exploring the world of Diablo 4, gathering some epic loot, or slaying demons in nightmare dungeons, all of which from the luxury of your own couch, you can check out the link in the description, and a big thank you to GameStop for sponsoring this video. Alright you guys, this is my no bullshit review of Diablo 4. I have been playing this game an insane amount since launch.
I haven't seen a lot of perspectives from rogues. It's mainly druids and barbarians, honestly. No one seems to play Necro and Rogue. Well, that's not true, but you know what I mean.
I recently reached level 100 earlier today, and the date of recording is June 9th. I wanted to reach 100 to make this video because I wanted to share my thoughts about the game, the things that I really do like about the endgame systems, and the things that I think they can improve going forward into an update like Season 1 or in future patches, because some of them I think are such minor changes, but I think would have a massive impact on player experience.
They should do the minor changes instantaneously. You always do the minor changes instantaneously so the people playing don't have to suffer. And, you know, do the big changes when a season releases or whatever.
Alright, so jumping straight into it, guys, the leveling experience in Diablo 4, as far as the MSQ goes, I'm not going to bore you with it too much, but overall I thought it was pretty fun. I thought Act 3 dragged on a little bit too long, but the last act of the game is pretty cool, and if you are a fan of Diablo overall, the cutscenes are really good, and I enjoyed it.
No one has said otherwise, yeah.
As far as the post-MSQ goes, this progression system with the world tier is really fun. I actually liked it a lot. As you go through the world tiers and you get into world tier 3 and 4, you start unlocking better gear. And that's pretty encouraging as you're progressing through the game. There will be a dead zone between like 55 and like 65 that some of you may be experiencing right now.
That's so true. I'm currently level 60 on the Necro. I'm thinking I'm gonna just go and get World Tier 4 because I actually can easily do it because I'm a Necromancer. I'm literally invulnerable to almost all damage almost all the time with my build.
You're like trying to get to like World Tier 4, but you don't have like any more upgrades at all. You've already kind of acquired all of your gear, and you're probably sitting on like all of these aspects that are like really, they're rolled almost perfect, and you want to put them on your gear, but you don't want to put it on a sacred item. You're trying to get the ancestral loot. And you may have even completed your capstone dungeon to unlock World Tier 4. That's how you unlock these. You do like a dungeon to get to the next tier, but you're too weak. And so it can be a little like frustrating because you're just kind of like grinding experience.
I'm doing currently sigils, and those dungeons are already 10 levels above me. I'm kind of probably doing them wrong, but again, I can still easily manage. It just takes a little bit longer.
And you're not really getting any more upgrades. And when you get to World Tier 4, the upgrades are like insane, right? The eye level jump is crazy. That is a bit of a dead zone that I think they should address. But as soon as you hit World Tier 4, level 70, everything becomes like way more fun, right? The game is much more challenging, but your build starts to come online because you get those resource regeneration legendaries that you probably really need. You might be getting more of those unique.
Well, that's bad news for me because my Necromancer actually has 0 essence spenders
that you need for your build. And just everything becomes insane value. And you know that the gear that you're getting is going to be gear that you're going to be keeping for quite some time. Hell Tides are worth it. Whispers of the Dead are worth it. World bosses are worth it. I mean, everything that you need, like Nightmare Dungeons are worth it. We'll talk about that more in a second. But just everything becomes so valuable, and your build feels
Dude, this is already a way different take on the game than pretty much anyone else I have ever heard talk about it. No one even mentions this dead zone before World Tier 4.
So much better because you're progressing down your Paragon tree enough where you're getting these glyphs and these rare nodes, and you start dealing insane damage. And it goes from being this like, kind of slow-paced game, which some people may like, to a much faster-paced game, which I personally enjoyed. And that part of the game, that 70 to 80 range, is so much fun. As far as the combat goes in this game, I played Rogue. I played with a couple buddies of mine throughout the game, different friends. I switched my build several times. I played Trap Rogue, Twisting Blades Rogue, and then I switched to Pen Shot Rogue a couple times. That's what I'm playing now. I changed some of my skills around. I really enjoyed playing Rogue. It had a lot of fun builds to play. The gameplay was generally pretty different between each build. It was extremely squishy, but it felt very rewarding. My friends also, when I talked to them, they love playing Sork. They love playing Druid. Barb, my friends enjoyed towards the later parts of the game. I'll talk more about that in a second. But overall, for an ARPG, guys, in the classes and the combat, it is very fun. They did a really good job in this game where you get the satisfying feeling just blowing up a giant pack of mobs. I wish the mob density in more of the dungeons was better because that's the best part of the game. When they're scattered a lot, it's like this weird
There's big clumps, you know.
You're like not able to like do what you want to do. But when you do get the opportunity to blow up this big pack, it's so satisfying, and they nailed it there. I don't know. It's really enjoyable. As far as like class balance goes, it's really traditional Blizzard class balance, man. I've been playing Blizzard games my entire life, and for years, the balance has always been wonky. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, like, you know, where's the leaderboards? And, you know, they said they want to perfect the leaderboards. My honest take on this, you guys, is maybe that's true. But I personally feel the reason we're not getting leaderboards is because the shit's wonky as hell. I mean, like, my legendary got disabled today because like Barb's had this like weird snapshotting with Whirlwind where they were like hitting for 100 billion, and they keep like disabling different legendaries or, you know, uniques and things like that.
So, snapshotting is one of Blizzard's stupidest mechanics. Essentially, it works like this. If you cast a dot while you're, for example, under some kind of 50% damage reduction debuff, and that dot lasts 30 seconds, and you cast it, then that dot, for all its duration, will be minus 50 damage. Even though that debuff that made you do 50% less damage is removed, that dot will still never deal more damage. And by snapshotting, he means you get a bunch of buffs on yourself, and then you activate some kind of ability, and you don't let it go. You don't let it reset. Your buffs are already gone, but the crazy damage that ability does is still there because it has snapshotted its damage to when you started, when you had these crazy buffs on you. That is what snapshotting is.
Where they don't work. And so that's why I don't think they actually have leaderboards. I think it's going to take some time for them to get the balance down. And I do feel bad, like Barbs are getting all these nerfs. They nerfed glyphs by like 60%. And honestly, I understand why now, because these things are fucking insane. Like, as I was reading through some of these, the effects were nerfed by 60%.
Yeah,
they're strong.
These things are
like
insane.
The power of 2 weapons. You know, your damage starts to scale so high that we were like obliterating bosses, right? Like bosses are like rare NPCs. World bosses feel like
bosses are actually less than rare NPCs. Some white mobs can actually one-shot you. Bosses are like child's play. They can never even touch you.
I think we killed the world boss in like 20 seconds. But overall, the classes feel good and the combat's good for an ARPG. It's not like some crazy MMO combat, guys. It's an ARPG. So if you ever played an ARPG, expect that. Don't expect like revolutionary combat, but it feels good, snappy, responsive, and fun. And I enjoyed it.
Boom.
For what it was.
Boom.
I do want to talk a little bit regarding the quality of life in Diablo 4 and the UI. I know a lot of people have talked about the UI, and I don't want to bore you with that same shit, but what I do want to say, the reality is that this game, the more I've played it, it feels like this game was designed console first. In fact, I know it is. For example, there are like no search functions in the game. And so when you're trying to like find which dungeon to go to, you have to like manually look for it. If you're doing like a nightmare dungeon, you'll activate like a key, and yes, it will mark it for you on the map.
Yeah, but then you can lose it.
This is actually a bug in the game that if you're doing it in a group and your friends aren't there next to you and you activate it in town and then you like run to it and they port to you, it will have this like weird thing where like when you go in, your friend will enter, it'll kick you out, and the dungeon will be scaled for 2, 3, 4 people depending on how many people you have in the party, and it's the key becomes like a wash, right? The sigil becomes like a wash, and so like that's one thing. I can't search dungeons. I can't search, on my friends list. I can't, who's online. My clan, I can't search. Again, over time, like at the start, it doesn't bother you. You don't even notice it. But as you play the game more, it starts to get like frustrating. Here, like I can't search any of my aspects. So I have to manually look through each one. If I could just search like barrier and look for like my barrier legendaries, it would help.
Oh yeah, this is the worst part though.
Letting you know it's defensive, offensive. But I do think... Totally don't mind the game being on console. It's fine, right? But it's like I would like the PC version of the game to feel a little bit more like a PC version of the game. The emote wheel. Anyway, these are all things.
I honestly think Blizzard's just incompetent. They have failed these things constantly. Again, the moment they said that Diablo 4 is gonna have PvP, I instantaneously know that's a blatant lie. Blizzard has not balanced PvP in a single game for 20 years that they have had. There's always something completely busted. There's one-shotting and all of that stuff, okay? Honestly, Heroes of the Storm is the closest Blizzard has ever come to balancing, and it's still kind of a nightmare, honestly.
Things that I think they can improve on. Don't think it's too hard to implement. I think it's an easy fix for them in that aspect. Let's talk a little bit about the itemization and gearing in Diablo 4. I know it's a simple ARPG in terms of like itemization, like all of the items, the stats that you want, at least for Rogue, is like, you want like 3 things. You want like crit strike chance, crit damage, vulnerable damage, and then maybe a few.
Essentially the exact same stuff everyone wants, unless you're like, I don't know, you have a dot or something.
Other things like ranks to certain skills. It's not too complex. Resistances right now in this game are like pretty useless. You want like damage reduction.
Yeah.
There's like a few key things
Armor
that
is resistances.
But it feels good getting items in this game. It really does. At least in the early parts, early 70s, 80s, it feels so damn good getting an item, especially if it's a big damage increase for you or if it's a unique that you really need. And you can't craft gear in this game yet. I think it would go a long way if you could. But you can like re-roll like an affix that you don't want on the item, and it's like RNG, and then you get to choose.
Yeah.
Like, there you go, crit check and imbued, right?
They really need to add some kind of, Path of Exile style risk reward type of crafting system. Now that would be absolutely amazing. Find a base and then start risk reward crafting. And then you could actually make like Hell Tides better, dungeons drop some kind of materials, Hell Tides drop some kind of materials, the Whispering Tree drops some kind of special materials designed for crafting. It could be so good, because the game already has all of these systems available, honestly. You just need to, well, pretty much just make it accessible. But it's all there, already there.
It costs a lot to reroll, by the way, but you can reroll different affixes. So getting gear in this game actually feels very good. The problem actually, though, with the gearing, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, is that when you get to World Tier 4, right, Torment, which I don't know how long, I think some people are going to be getting there soon. When you get here, the issue is that the gear in this game kind of scales to your level. So there's like a gear floor and like a gear ceiling. Like the max I think is like 820. And as you level, like it feels like it's weighted. Like you can get like an 800 item at like level 80 or 810 item at level 80, but you're more than likely going to see like 720, 740s. And this goes on all the way to like 90, and then you start seeing the upper 700s. And you already have all of your gear, so again, you're kind of in that like weird dead zone where you're not really seeing any upgrades, and you're kind of just grinding for experience.
Annoying.
And everything again loses value to you. Like Hell Tides only become useful for like these, what are they called? Forgotten Souls.
Yeah.
The loot that you get isn't that useful anymore. You probably already have all of your legendaries and stuff like that. So the chase...
Hell Tides are a great way to actually farm. The 175 chests that you can get there, those things just drop like, 5 legendaries constantly. And it takes like, what, 15 minutes roughly to get 175 souls? Pretty easy stuff.
For the gear kind of disappears. Like I'll do like some endgame activity. I'll do a Nightmare Dungeon 50. I'll just get into it now, and I'll get like a sacred item at the end. You know what I mean? I don't even sacred drops for the tier previous. Like I don't want to see an end of dungeon reward as a sacred item. I want to see like an ancestral item and something a little bit closer to where I'm at in the game. What I'm getting at is that the difficulty of the content that you do does not determine the loot, the item level, the item power that you get.
True.
It is determined,
Yeah.
it feels like, on your level. So you're not like, if you're doing a nightmare.
I mean, again, you can still get white items for no reason. You can still get blue items for no reason. It makes no sense that these items can even drop because they're completely useless at you know, past level 10 almost, you know?
Dungeon 50, right? And you're pushing it, you're not going to see higher level gear. You could just spam some normal dungeons and see the same exact gear, right? It's just about grinding mobs. The more mob density you have, the more loot you have, the more loot chances you have, the better chance you have of rolling something at higher item power, better, whatever, right? Like that, and that doesn't really feel good. I think that there should be some clear gear floors and ceilings, and it should progress based on the difficulty of content you're doing, not just what level you are. And all of what I just mentioned really ties into my last point about the game that I think is something they have to fix before season 1. The end game activities need a lot of work, okay? Hell tides, world bosses, all of those things, like I mentioned, because the way that the item scaling works and the gear scaling works, they fall off so hard where like you lose that. Like early on in this game, it feels as if the game was designed like 1 through 70, so much shit to do. When you hit 70,
True.
you got like all of your stuff. You have your horizontal stuff, but you have hell tides, world bosses, nightmare dungeons, whispers of the dead, and all of them have like great value, and you can just farm some different mobs and things like that. But as you get into this like 80, 90 tier, you already kind of have your gear, and then everything just starts to feel like, oh, I don't really need to bother doing that. I just want to level.
Yeah.
And the way that you would think that you level.
This always happens with these kind of things, you know? If everything's supposed to be equal, there's gonna be something that's just superior, unless you give a unique point to why you need to do something. And you know, Forgotten Souls is not enough in the unique point, sadly.
Level in this game is through nightmare dungeons, but the reality is nightmare dungeon rewards are not good right now. They really need to buff these, because I kept trying to do nightmare dungeons with my friends, because some of the most fun that I had was doing a nightmare dungeon, like trying to do a 50 when we were a nightmare dungeon 50 when we were 60, and the mobs are like 90 or whatever plus, and we would try to like somehow manage to clear it, right? And we would like try to get to the very end of it. We would die, res each other, like do loops and things like that. Barely make it to the end, and then you get like a sacred item at the end. You know what I mean? Like, because it's not scaled on your difficulty, the content you're doing. It's scaled by your.
Also, it sounds like he's not gonna touch upon this, but the good rewards should be throughout all of the dungeon, not at the end. You know, you shouldn't be put in a dungeon with the idea, okay, I'm gonna just speed blitz it because the only reward is at the end. That is kind of a bad way of doing it.
Your level. But even when we would try to like only do S tier nightmare dungeons, right? Like Champ's Demise, right? Or like Cathedral. We would stack like 5 of them together in a group, so we would not have to use travel time whatsoever. We would just spam it back to back to back to back to back, 3 levels ahead for maximum XP, right? Just to test this. We still leveled slower than just spamming normal dungeons. And it's like, well, fuck, you know what I mean? Like trying to be efficient with nightmare dungeons, you're still not as fast as doing normal dungeons. You're not getting better gear. So like, why even do them as you're leveling up? All you're getting is glyph XP, and you can literally get that stuff later, right? And as you level up, you can do higher level nightmare dungeons and get more glyph XP instead of getting like 5 on the way.
It's ridiculous.
So I feel like the way the game should be designed is they need to work on the gear scaling, so it's like the activity you do rewards you better gear. It shouldn't just be RNG across the board with this massive scale in World Tier 4. It should be like, hey, like you're doing a World Helltide, those chests, they give better gear. You're doing a Nightmare Dungeon, that gives better gear. And
that's good.
Nightmare Dungeons
makes sense,
the way
right?
that you level up through the game, not spamming normal dungeons, because that doesn't make any sense. And I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, and I'm not sure if they haven't experienced it yet or they're going to experience it. But it doesn't really make going to 80, 90, 100 feel worth it because it's like this really long grind. It takes a long time and you're not really feeling rewarded for doing it. And I think that if Nightmare Dungeons were better and the gearing scale was better, it would make that experience much more fun. However, the last thing I want to talk about, and I don't want to ignore this because I think this is actually easily the best part of the game that I think a lot of people won't actually make it to. And so I want to make sure I include this in the video. Where the fuck is this dungeon? I can't search it, so I have to I can manually find it, you know? I gotta manually find this thing. One thing that this game needs to have from 85, 90 to 100 is pinnacle boss encounters. Because when you get to 100, and I don't think a lot of people will actually go for 100. I think a lot of people will kind of stop at that 80 threshold and make a new class. But going into Season 1, I would like to see more stuff like this, or Season 2. When you get to 100, you can do this Uber Pinnacle Lilith boss encounter, where you get to fight Lilith at level 100. This should exist at 85, 90,
actually good,
95, 100 with the previous act bosses. So I'm just going to go in here and show you really quick. I'm going to get absolutely demolished. I got to level 100. I knew my build was terrible. Currently, my legendary is disabled, and I have 0 sustain in this build. I was just trying to clear mobs as fast as I can. This boss obliterates me, right? She absolutely shits on me, even though I honestly have Bisque gear for my build. My legendary doesn't work. Right, I'll just show you how much damage she does. Hit me. That was my shield. Just hit me. Look at my HP.
Oh, wow. Now, the interesting thing about this is that, yeah, I kind of, when I was first fighting Lilith, I wasn't immortal, but I also found this kind of annoying. So, you see, the bad part with Diablo is there's not actually probably any difficulty. Lilith probably doesn't have any cool mechanics or anything. And this wing attack does a lot of damage. But then you understand one thing. That you can literally run circles around her until she starts the animation, and then she's locked in a direction. And this attack will never do damage to you if you do it like that.
Right, she hit me one time, I'm dead, right? And I can spam pop, but I have no sustain. I don't want to spoil the rest of the fight for you, but you need some sustain and shielding. That type of experience where I got absolutely shit on showed me, wait a minute. I now can farm for a new build to try to solo that boss and see if I can kill it. And if
you can figure out that you can literally run circles around her and she will never damage you. Which is, again, seemingly the easiest option.
That exists at 85, 90, 95, 100. It gives you these checkpoints. Kind of
that
like
would
an
be
Elden
cool,
Ring. I don't want to use that example, but like, you fight the boss, you can't kill it, you go back into the world, you farm better gear, you push your shit, you change your build, and then you come back to try to kill it. And then you kill it, like, all right, sick, that's the first check.
That would be good, but I'm not gonna lie. Doing something like that, Blizzard's just not capable of it, okay? You know? Making this game probably literally already was all the effort that they have for like the next 20 years. And, you know, making something like that is difficult. So Blizzard is not the people who are going to be able to do something like that.
And you progress through the game. Similar to your capstone dungeons, but for these solo boss encounters. If that existed in the rest of the game beyond level 80, not just at 100 where most people won't make it to, I think this game would be infinitely better.
Honestly, you know what I want to see? Raids. There's no reason to not have like some kind of 1 week cooldown raids where you can get some kind of interesting kind of upgrades, you know? I see no reason we would we couldn't add this in Diablo 4. Literally none.
With all of that being said, I really enjoyed my time in this game.
Makes sense.
It was fun. I think this game needs some updates, some improvements. I think Season 1, a lot's kind of riding on that to see what they do with the game. But if you are a Diablo fan and you just want to hop on the game and play it, especially if you're a casual player, because keep in mind, this is just my feedback as someone that's like experienced the endgame systems. Games should never really be designed around me.
Bravo.
I think it should be like a spectrum.
True.
I think if you're on that spectrum, just having a couple of hours a day to play, and you want to try out some different classes and different builds, you can have a ton of fun in this game. I just think as you progress through the game and get into that end game, which might take you a while anyway, you'll start to see some of the things that I'm talking about, and I want to provide feedback on them before you experience them, and maybe they can update it sooner rather than later.
See, I told you. I told you. Way different take than anyone else. Makes sense, makes sense. Hardcore Lost Ark player at the end of the day. The mind's just built different. Anyway, that's Stoops with 2 Z's and 2 O's. And then there's highlights, which I didn't think was real, but hey, it is. In any case, thanks for watching. This was Citizen. Thanks a lot, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.